stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Swoboda, please note Dr. Young and Mayor Polasic are absent. Everybody else is in attendance. And I'd like to welcome everybody again to the meeting, November 3rd. Are there any items from council? We have 2 on the agenda, but is there anything else from anybody?
I'd like to add for discussion at our next meeting, the Tourist Center. Mayor Armstrong, former Mayor Armstrong would like to speak to that again. And for us to be able to speak with him about that, I'd like to see it on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a request from one of the Swans Crossing residents. Ms. Atwell called and she says they had a meeting, I think a couple of Fridays ago, to start up a neighborhood watch, but they would request or wanted for us to see about putting some bumper stops somewhere on that road because there's people just flying out through there. I talked to John and he said just to bring it up. I know that we've considered it before and decided not to, but he said just bring it up so they know that we are aware and that we did bring it to your attention.
Yes, ma'am. And then I'll make sure that the police department, I know Captain Brashears is in the audience over patrol, make sure that they do some frequent patrols in that area for speeders. So
Okay.
he's shaking his head back there.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
All right. Nothing over there? Okay. The first item we have is it's Municipal Court Week, and we have a proclamation we'd like to present to Municipal Court. And Mr. Goosh is going to read that, and it's the Municipal Court.
Sherry, Norris, come on up, Sherry, and whoever else you're bringing up with you.
This is a proclamation that's been signed by Mayor Paul Polasic, and it reads in part, whereas more people, citizens and non-citizens alike, come in personal contact with municipal courts than all other Texas courts combined, and whereas public impression of the entire Texas judicial system is largely dependent upon the public's experience in municipal court, whereas municipal judges and court support personnel have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and to conform to the standards set by the canons of judicial conduct, now, therefore, I, Paul Polasic, Mayor of the City of Victoria, do hereby proclaim the week of November 2nd through November 6th, 2015, as Municipal Court Week, and further extend appreciation to all municipal judges and court support personnel for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to our community.
Andrew's got a few comments.
Yeah, I think Sherry may still be trying to shut down court over there, but
okay.
I know she was going to recognize her staff, so Sherry, come on up real quick. But before she does, I wanted to recognize Sherry, NORAD, and Tiffany Tota both. They just received their Level 2 certification from the Texas Municipal Courts Education Center. That gives us one of 352 cities in Texas with at least one at Level 2, and there is a Level 3 that I believe they're both working towards, so that's something to be proud of as well. So if you want to introduce the staff.
I have 2 of my staff here, Tiffany Tota and Sylvia Rosas.
Thank you for the job you do.
Yes, thank you very much. Real appreciate it. It's not an easy one.
Thank you.
And then the second item we have is the potential anti-camping regulations. And we're just going to get an update tonight from Mr. Goosh.
Yes, sir. We've been looking into the homeless camping up along the north part of town, as you requested, and I've been talking with Ron Johnson, attorney at TxDOT, about their ability to move people out of those areas and stuff. I've also been looking into the ordinances in other cities to try to compare to see what's available for us, and then doing the background legal research to see what is legal for us to do. I do have some ideas about things that we could potentially implement to prevent that conduct. But I think it's probably advisable if we wait until all 7 council members are here, if you're okay with that,
Yes.
so that we can have that discussion when everybody has an opportunity to
I think
participate.
that'd be great. December?
December 1.
Okay.
December 1, okay.
Well, can I interject a little bit? Is there any way we can at least advise some of these people of other alternatives? If we're catching them out there, handing them maybe a slip of paper or some contact names of some of the shelters we do have and other alternatives that they can seek out, and maybe we could alleviate some of that behavior even before we have to make a rule on it.
Especially with the inclement weather that we've been having, and then here comes winter, and you don't want to just throw them somewhere where they're,
They're safe too.
yes.
And I've observed a number of people I hadn't really noticed until recently, people walking with backpacks and so forth. I won't describe them, but
The numbers increased dramatically in recent time because I'm more or less in the center of that out there. There was one gentleman that's been there 5 or 6 years, same guy. He has since left. This newer group has not been there very long. And I consider it a group because they seem to coalesce around each other. I could be mistaken.
We'll be glad to work with the police department and make sure they've got information to provide.
Is there anything else on items from council? Okay, then we'll move on to citizen communication. And at this time, the public's invited to address the city council on any item that is not specifically on the agenda with a public hearing. And if you would, please just state your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes out of courtesy to others.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Staley. I am the Executive Director of Golden Crescent Habitat for Humanity. And you have on your addendum tonight a resolution to waive building permit fees for the next 5 homes that we'll build. 3 in Swan Crossing and the first 2 in Koinonia, and we're so excited. And the reason we're asking council to waive these fees is because it gives us access to 24-hour preliminary access to the Texas Department of Housing Community Affairs Bootstrap Fund. The Texas legislature gives Bootstrap $3 million a year, and that used to build 90 houses a year. Construction costs have gone up, and now they're anticipating that it will only build 75 homes. So for Habitat, and they've picked up 3 additional agencies who want those funds. So for you to waive these fees gives us that extra leg up, and it's critically important for us over the next 12 months because we've got lots of families that are waiting in line for these homes. We're very excited. So thank you for your careful consideration, and I appreciate a vote to waive those building permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Staley.
Hi, I'm Kim Pickens, 812 Blythe Road, and I just wanted to take the opportunity today to talk about the situation with homelessness. The last time I was in front of you all, I was speaking on the lack of affordable housing, and that will be a continual theme running through here. I'm here today to ask for a thoughtful dialogue to take place regarding the situation of homelessness in Victoria. That dialogue must include organizations that provide services to those in need, religious entities that have a vested interest in the well-being of this community, and those of you in charge of the affairs of the city and the county. We can no longer stand idly by and pretend that we don't have a problem. Homelessness is not something that affects only large cities, but many rural and smaller communities across the country. The only way we will be able to affect a real change is by wanting to help those in need and giving them an opportunity for a better life. Turning a blind eye and demonizing people because they don't have a regular residence that they can call their own is not the solution. It creates apathy and hate towards our fellow human beings. It leads us to make policies that hurt and not help. The top 5 causes of homelessness are lack of affordable housing, lack of a livable wage, medical issues or conditions, domestic violence, and mental illness. Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs are food, clothing, and shelter. If Victoria does not have enough places for people to safely shelter, how can the City Council justify taking away the basic need of shelter if that so happens to be a tent? How are we able to see a tent and say, why is that here and what are you going to do to remove it? Instead of saying a person lives here who has nowhere else to go, how do we help them? I applaud the quickness with regards to communication between the city government, State Representative Jeannie Morrison's office, and the Texas Department of Transportation when constituents cited concerns with seeing tents along Loop 463. However, it would have been a greater feat to have seen those involved solve the problem of those who were homeless living in those tents instead of knocking down the trees, the tents, and all vegetation to remove the thought of returning to a place that they had called home. In criminalizing the lack of housing those people faced, it served no purpose other than to remove the tents from the sight of those who would rather complain than to come up with a solution that would have given those people a chance to connect with services and not to continue to render them homeless. There is already an ordinance in place in our parks that state that camping is not allowed without permission. And if the city is not willing to provide any alternatives to the basic right of shelter, there is no justification to ban the act of sleeping outdoors. It becomes a human rights issue if we as a community stand and watch our neighbors arrested and ticketed for sitting down too long, sleeping without shelter, and being hungry. The city has long relied upon the local organizations that have taken on the responsibilities of caring for our most vulnerable populations. They cannot continue this journey without the assistance of those of you who we have entrusted to make our decision for Victorians, all Victorians, not just some. Every organization that has come before this council to talk about their needs for funding are doing the best that they can, but we need to get creative. There are more things that can be done to make positive changes. As we move forward, we need to look at the types of funding programs that the Department of Housing and Urban Development have that we are not utilizing. We need to be proactive when permitting and approving new apartment dwellings that should always consider a percentage of their units to have rental amounts on a sliding scale to accommodate our city's need for more affordable housing. Every new property that has come online in the past 2 years has yet to be at full capacity, yet we continue to see a growing population of Victorians who have no stable housing. VISD has currently identified over 560 youths who are by definition homeless. If they have 2 parents, that equals over 1,600 people who have no stable place to sleep each night. They may be doubled up with relatives or friends, sleep in their cars, or sleep under the stars. There are too many barriers to serve those that find themselves without housing here in our city. We have 1 men's shelter, 1 shelter for domestic violence, and 3 programs that help women and women with younger children. We have no places for families with boys over 12 to safely shelter. We have no places for a couple with or without children to safely shelter. If you found yourself without a home due to loss of a job, a medical tragedy, a death in your family, a fire, or a flood, tell me, what is the first thing that you rely on? It's your family. No one should ever have to make a decision of who gets to stay together based on service barriers. When you lack a support system, you are more likely to spin out of control and have a more difficult time getting back into a stable and productive life. I understand that many people are worried about how it looks to have people begging on street corners. It concerns me that those same people aren't concerned as to why more isn't being done to help instead of hide our brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers, whose lives have taken a turn that no one expected. No one wakes up and says, today I want to be homeless. No one says, I want people to look down on me. No one says, I want to be invisible. We are humans with responsibility to love our neighbors. We have the responsibility to do what we can to build the best community possible, and that is not always easy. But we must continue to work in order to help the least of these. I invite us all to come to the table, sit down, and discuss real and practical ways that we as a community can prevent and end homelessness.
Thank you, Mrs. Pickens.
Hello, I'm Jenny Stafford. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Midcoast Family Services. Our agency has served homeless persons for the last 10 years. In 2004, we sat down with the City Planning Department and wrote the first HUD grant, which was a monster, and brought in HUD programs so that we could serve chronically homeless men. Following that, we added a program for women with disabilities, and then later families with disabilities. Over that length of time, those 10 years, I've learned some things. Got a lot more to learn, but I've learned some things, and there's several different kinds of homelessness. They don't all look the same. I've met homeless that are truly transients. It's that old hobo that we used to think of. They're homeward bound. They're going somewhere else. This is not their permanent residence. They're going to a family. They're going to some place that they think they're going to have some security. I've met people who are drug abusers and who have fallen so into their addiction that it's taken total control of their life, and they're lost in the disease. I think the most difficult is the mentally ill. Men and women living on the streets that don't know the days of the week and don't know how to tell time and can't read and write, aren't able to care for themselves and yet have been disconnected from their families. But the one underlying thing that they all share, except perhaps for a few minorities, is that they have extreme family dysfunction. As I heard someone say once, they had a nuclear bomb go off in their family somewhere. Most of them have either lost connection from their family because they grew up in foster care and they never created that bond with their parent. Maybe a parent died. I know of at least 3 that were abandoned as teenagers on the street. And imagine a 13, a 15, or an 18-year-old being left on the street to fend for themselves. Or one of the most sad things is somebody who's just barely hanging on emotionally and they lose a spouse. And I know of at least 3 men living on the street right now that's happened to. They lost their spouse and everything else was pulled out from underneath them. Homelessness is a dreadful, dreadful condition, and one that I wouldn't want to trade my place for, even for a night. And I'm concerned about the ordinance because I'm concerned that it's going to create a place that it's going to make criminals out of homeless, people that are already facing extreme barriers. I'm concerned that it's going to be difficult for our law enforcement to enforce. You know, what do you do with a sick person when you have to pick up their bed and tell them to leave and go somewhere? Because it's not going to end. They're going to go somewhere. They have to sleep someplace, and so you may be moving them down the street, but you haven't really addressed the problem. And I'm bringing this to you because as a HUD provider, as a HUD-funded program, we only have 46 beds. We get about $200,000 and almost $300,000 a year to serve homeless people. That's all the permanent supportive housing beds there are in Victoria. When you were talking about handing out resource cards, that's great. The problem is there's not enough resources. There are not enough beds. If we doubled our census and were able to serve twice as many, we still wouldn't be able to serve all of them. Partly because not all of them are well enough to even come into the program. We had one man that we tried to bring into the program. He was mentally ill, and he still refused to sleep inside the apartment. He slept outside the door. There are so many challenges and barriers to serving the homeless. As a human being, as an American, as a Christian, it's something that I struggle with, because what is my responsibility? Is it okay for our community just to say, people should live that way? Is it okay for us just to turn our eye to that? And I brought that question up to someone I consider much smarter than myself. And he said he thinks our job is to provide palliative care. He does this by handing out sandwiches in Austin. He hands out bottled water. He drives around with a food truck and tries to take care of just the immediate needs to make their lives a little better. I can tell you an ordinance that's going to tear down tents and destroy what little property they have is not palliative in any way. I beg you to sit down with us together as a provider and see if we can't come up with a solution. I don't know what the solution is. It is a huge problem. I don't think Washington knows. I don't think Austin knows. I don't think anybody knows what the problem is because it's so complex. But let's sit down together and see if we can't work something out that's humane and honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stafford.
Brother Mike Swearingen. I reside at 803 East Mesquite Lane in Victoria, and I'm also pastor and director of Rushing Wind Fellowship and Mission. 2 years ago, we took up the mission of providing for the homeless population on inclement days and nights, where we open up our church, scoot back the furniture. I get in the kitchen and start preparing meals, and we feed them breakfast and supper and provide them a nice warm place to stay. We're doing that out of grassroots donation and the budget of our church. And on a good Sunday, we have about 35 to 40 there. we're making a dent only in the homeless situation. We're seeing, in fact, right before I came over here, I had a young man call me, and he was obviously a very young man, a teenager, that had been put out by his mom's boyfriend. And he's trying to find a job and needed a place to stay tonight. We have a very young homeless population right now. And I think the homeless are showing us what we need to do, because so many of the older homeless and those who have chosen, and that's right, some of them have chosen to live on the street, have taken these younger homeless people who are homeless by some circumstances, maybe even some bad choices. They're taking them by the hand and getting them through each day and night, caring for their brother or sister. And as we come up with ways to hide our homeless situation, as we come up with ways to try to squelch the embarrassment or lighten the embarrassment, it's a very real fact that there's a lot of folks on our streets that are homeless. I have been told there's over 600 homeless children in Victoria Independent School District. We're turning our heads, sticking them in the sand, trying to ignore the problem is not going to make it go away. And I agree that what's going to happen, we're going to give records, criminal records, to those who are going to find a place to lay down and sleep. Any one of us can only withstand so many hours of sleeplessness, and we're going to find us a place to lay down and sleep. That's our nature. We're going to find a place to eat, even if it's in a garbage can, rummaging through it. We just have to get very constructive and set pride and embarrassment aside and do what the good Lord told us to do. Love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Amen? Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Swearingen. Is there anybody else who would like to speak this evening? If not, then we'll go ahead and close citizens' communications and go into ordinances. And the first one is C1. It's ordinance without a public hearing.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Victoria City Code to update and amend Section 13-77, which adopted a drought contingency plan and established water use reduction and rationing guidelines and mechanisms, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for codification and savings, and declaring an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Is there any discussion?
I just want one question. I was reading over the ordinance, and have we ever had to go into stage 5?
Not to my knowledge.
No, ma'am, we've never had to enact any deeper stage than stage 3.
3? Okay, because I noticed that as a newcomer or a new customer, you would let you know or the staff know that you have more than 2 people living in the house. Because I think it said something about if you have more than 2 people, your standard water bill was going to allow for 2 people, and if not, they would have to let you know in advance. And it stated that the new people or new customers are automatically being put into the system, whether they have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people living in the house. What is to keep us from, say, letting the people that already have accounts to let you know how many people live in that house, to avoid having all these people call in case of a stage 5, if you're already picking up the data for the new customers?
That's a good question.
I think that's water rationing. That's when we're in extreme dire water issues. The chances are so rare that we would ever go into that. I think any data that we collect today probably will not be relevant at the time. I think that's the real reason we don't just collect that ongoing like that.
Okay. I just wondered because it was part of the, okay.
Good question. there any other questions or comments or discussion? Then I'll call for a vote on item C1. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. All right, C1 passed. Item C2 does require a public hearing. We'll listen to it first.
Item C2 is an ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Victoria, Texas, and the annexation of certain territory consisting of approximately 0.178 acres of land at the request of DGMP Incorporated, adopting a service plan for the territory to be annexed, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for publication and savings, and declaring an effective date.
Okay, before I ask for a motion, can I open the public hearing, please? Anybody that would like to comment on item C2? No one's gotten up, so we will close the public hearing on item C2 and entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a first and a second. Is there any discussion on this one?
Okay. On page 2, page 1 of 2, under the ordinance number 2015 C2, there's a reference to 2.686 acres on number 2 in that paragraph, and it should be .178.
What paragraph?
It's numbered paragraph 2 of the ordinance. About halfway down that paragraph, there's a typographical error. It reads 2.686 where it should read 0.178.
So you're making a motion to amend
To amend
the
that,
ordinance
yes.
to read .178 acres instead of 2.686?
2.686, yes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the amendment. Is there any discussion on that amendment? No? Then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, the amendment passes, and we're back to the original motion to approve item C2 with the amendment. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Item C2 passes. And then we're on to the consent agenda.
There are 4 items on the consent agenda tonight that will be approved by a single vote. They are first, the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 20th, 2015. Second, a resolution approving the purchase of replacement sets of protective clothing for the Victoria Fire Department from Municipal Emergency Services Incorporated in the amount of $57,120, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchase and declaring an effective date. The third is a resolution approving the purchase of a self-contained breathing apparatus, 17 45-minute carbon cylinder bottles, and 2 thermal imaging cameras from Municipal Emergency Services Incorporated for a total of $34,506.52, utilizing both interlocal and cooperative purchasing agreements, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchases and declaring an effective date. And the fourth is a resolution approving the purchase of replacement parts for machinery used at the city's wastewater treatment plant from Equova Water Technologies, LLC, in the amount of $37,986, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchase and declaring an effective date.
Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Move we adopt D1 through 4.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The consent agenda passes, and we're on to resolutions. E1.
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, there's a substituted version of item E1 in front of you. Both the CM1 and the resolution are changed. The difference is primarily just to the dollar figure. The new dollar figure will be $833,477. The difference has to do with the Boone Chapman Runout Administration. And Ms. Martha Johnny will be available to answer questions on that once we get it on the floor. But I'd like to read the substituted resolution rather than what was in your original packet. So this would be a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Benefit Administrative Systems, BAS, to act as the city's medical and dental claims administrator and provide specific stop-loss insurance with Sun Life Cigna in an estimated total amount of $833,477 and declaring an effective date.
Was there a motion to approve or disapprove?
I move to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Second?
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve item E1. Is there any discussion?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
Just for 1 year?
The contract itself, yes, sir. It'll be renewed.
So it comes up every year. And we're changing because of the cost differential between this and Aetna, is that correct?
Well,
Well-
I'll let Cheryl
I'm
answer those
sorry.
questions.
I didn't
Go
mean to
ahead.
cut you off.
That's all right.
Yes, sir. We, just to do an introduction, and I have some people with me, if you would mind just indulging me for a minute, let me introduce them. We have some representatives that are here to help answer any questions that you might have this evening. We have Terry Raimondi from Benefit Administrative Systems, as well as Alicia Cannon and Todd Ramos, our benefit consultants from Willis of Texas. And then, of course, Wanda from the City of Victoria Human Resources Department is here as well. So, but yes, sir, to get back to your question, Mr. Alvarez, the change was important for us as a recommendation because, we continue to look for proactive measures to manage these health care costs in our health fund. And the increased cost of our stop-loss coverage, as well as in and out of network cost associated with specialties and providers, caused us to look at some alternatives. And so we did an RFP on our TPAs, our third-party administrators, and BAS was the one that we're recommending that we choose. Did I
We're
address?
changing from Boone Chapman to BAS as our third-party administrator,
Yes, sir.
as well as changing from Aetna to Cigna
Yes, sir.
as our medical health insurance,
Our network, yes, sir.
our network. And there's no premium changes from what was presented in the budget.
That's correct. Yes, sir. The plan design and premium changes from what we recommended in the budget and got approved stays the same. So this just changes that third-party administrator claims processing from Boone to BAS. With that, then changes the network again from Aetna to Cigna. And it does allow us to get some better rates on our stop-loss than what our renewal would have been with Aetna, which is included in the CM1 as well.
The employees the transition that the employees will see at the end of the year when we change over will be, how would you describe that?
The employees will see some change, not with regards to plan design or premium changes, but they will see a change in the provider card that they carry. It no longer will say Boone Chapman, it'll say BAS. They will have a change in their network. However, we've done a disruption report with the network, and we're like 99.8%, I believe, of what our current providers are in with the Aetna network are also included in the Cigna network. So not a whole lot of disruption from that standpoint. You might have a few employees that currently have providers that might fall out of Cigna. All we need to do is get those names, and we'll work with BAS to try to get those providers included. And then we are doing a mandatory enrollment this year because we want updated data in the new BAS system, so we are moving forward with regards to that.
So if someone goes to the emergency room on December 31st,
So December 31st will be covered under our 2015 plan, so Boone Chapman will handle those claims processing for us. Come January 1, it'll be BAS. But the plan design
if they stay through the first, they're now split.
well, how that's paid and how that's covered is the same as it was December 31st. That'll be January
Okay.
1. Yes, sir.
I'll stop there.
It's just you have a different administrator handling the claim is basically what it amounts to. Yes.
When you do the re-enrollment or, when we come back and talk to you for our medical insurance, you're going to provide us with the new doctors and everything the way you did last time?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
What we'll do is provide you with a list, a link to go
Okay.
to, so you can do a search of those providers in network. Yes, we'll work
Okay.
with BAS on getting that material in our enrollment materials that we'll be sending to employees. We actually start meetings next week.
Right, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll call a question for item E1. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, E1 passes, and we have one more resolution on the addendum.
Item E2 is a resolution waiving building permit fees for houses located at 3507, 3511, and 3608 Swan Drive, and 114 and 116 Myra Lane, to be built by the Golden Crescent Habitat for Humanity and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say for the people in Swans Crossing, these are houses that we approved already. They're not new houses, so we're just going to waive their building permit fee. Because they'll be calling.
Did have a question. At one time, we were encouraging infill on certain properties, And for a while, we were either giving them reduced or sewer tap fees and things of this nature. Do we still do that?
I don't recall, Mr. Halapaska.
Back away.
Yeah, and John's shaking his head that he doesn't recall
No,
doing
okay.
that, so,
Perhaps it was proposed at one point to encourage infill.
I think it had been bantered about. I remember it on planning.
Okay,
Talking
then
about it.
I wasn't just dreaming. Thank you.
You weren't. I'll back you up on that one. Okay, if there's no more discussion for item E2, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. E2 passes. And with that, we don't have any city manager reports or a work session or executive session, so at this point, the meeting is adjourned.
thank you.
I think that's the first time.